In the endless tapestry of the Force, where destinies intertwine and diverge like rivers meeting the sea, there exist moments of profound transformation. On the ancient world of Malachor, 19 years before the Battle of Yavin, Anakin Skywalker faced such a moment. But instead of falling to darkness, instead of becoming Darth Vader, he was touched by something older, something beyond the simple binary of light and dark. This is the story of that transformation, and the galaxy it created. The ancient world of Malachor screamed in silence. Beneath its obsidian surface, where the bones of dead civilizations stretched like roots through caverns older than the Republic itself, three figures moved with practiced efficiency. Anakin Skywalker, Jedi Knight and hero without fear, led the way through corridors carved from volcanic glass. Behind him, Ahsoka Tano kept her twin white-bladed lightsabers ignited, their glow casting fractured shadows across walls inscribed with warnings in the old tongue. Captain Rex brought up the rear, his DC-15A blaster rifle sweeping each intersection with the discipline that had kept the 501st alive through 3 years of hell. The energy readings spiked as they entered the central chamber, a space so vast its ceiling disappeared into shadow. At its center, suspended within rings of rotating metal that hummed with impossible age, hung something that made reality itself bend and warp. It looked like a collapsing star, but Anakin could feel through the Force that it was something far worse. A weapon, yes, but also a doorway. Master, the energy readings are off the scale. Whatever the Separatists found, it's not just another weapon. Rex, tell me the detonators are set. Charges are live, sir. We blow this facility, and whatever that thing is goes with it, but we need to move. Now. Then the droids attacked. Battle droids and super battle droids pouring from hidden alcoves like metallic insects, their blasters creating a storm of crimson death. Rex dropped to one knee, his shots precise and deadly. Ahsoka spun into the chaos, her sheen form directing bolts back into the machines. But Anakin felt something deeper. The artifact wasn't just a weapon, it was aware, and it was afraid. The rings began spinning faster, generating a vibration that traveled through the Force itself. The collapsing star pulsed, and with each pulse, reality cracked, revealing glimpses of other places, other times. Ahsoka's voice barely reached him over the chaos, but it was too late. The artifact detonated, not in fire, but in absolute silence. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you're enjoying this content so far, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch these videos without subscribing. Imagine what we could accomplish if everyone subscribed. We thank you all for your continued support. Anakin felt himself torn from reality, pulled toward the center of the maelstrom as space and time collapsed around him. He tumbled through dimensions that had no direction, no up or down, just an endless spiral of fractured images that seared themselves into his consciousness. He wasn't falling, he was being pulled, drawn towards something that existed beyond the boundaries of normal existence. The visions came in waves, each one more overwhelming than the last. He saw a warrior in ancient armor standing alone against impossible odds, carrying the weight of extinction on shoulders that refused to break. He saw a figure with ashen skin and crimson marks, chains wrapped around scarred forearms, standing in ruins that had once been the realm of gods. He saw something encased in armor, the color of rage itself, moving through horrors with the single-minded purpose of complete annihilation. These weren't random images, they were memories, ancient, powerful, belonging to warriors who had fought in conflicts that made the Clone Wars look like skirmishes. And impossibly, terrifyingly, they were becoming his memories. The warrior who endured, the god who fell and rose through rage, the slayer who never stopped. Three aspects of the same eternal force, avatars of war itself. Anakin felt his body changing, felt something fusing with him at the cellular level. Ancient technology beyond anything the Republic had ever dreamed of, powered by crystals that sang with the Force but predated the Jedi by millennia. It wrapped around him like a second skin, interfacing with his very essence. His last coherent thought before the darkness claimed him completely was of Padmé, her smile, the secret of their marriage, the child she'd just told him she was carrying. Then even that precious memory dissolved, replaced by something older and darker, and infinitely more terrible. When Anakin Skywalker finally stopped falling, he was no longer the same person who had entered the chamber on Malachor. When consciousness returned, it came slowly, like surfacing from deep water. Anakin opened his eyes to find himself in a Republic medical bay, but everything felt wrong. His body was heavier, more powerful, responding to thoughts before he'd fully formed them. He looked down and froze. His body was encased in armor unlike anything from any known civilization. Metal that shifted between colors, black and gold and deep crimson, with lines of blue energy running through it like veins. At its center, where his heart should be, something pulsed with light that felt like the Force, but deeper, older. Easy, General. You've been out for 3 days. Ahsoka leaned against the wall behind him, her arms crossed, her expression troubled. She'd seen Anakin survive impossible situations before, but this was different. The medical droids had tried everything to remove the armor, but their scans showed it wasn't just attached, it was integrated, keeping him alive. Removing it would be fatal. The armor fused to you, Anakin. Whatever happened down there, you're changed. I remember falling. I remember other warriors, other wars. They're inside me now. He stood, and even that simple motion felt different. He could feel the force around him, but it was no longer a gentle current. It was a torrent of raw power that would sweep him away if he lost focus. The warrior memories whispered in the back of his mind. Discipline, rage, purpose. 3 voices that spoke as one, teaching him things the Jedi had never known. Rex's hand drifted unconsciously toward his holstered blaster, a gesture that hurt more than any physical wound. His most trusted brother in arms was afraid of him now. Ahsoka sensed it too, and stepped forward, placing herself between them. The door opened and a protocol droid entered with a message. The Jedi Council required Anakin's presence immediately. Master Yoda had sensed something during his transformation, something that had sent ripples through the Force across the entire galaxy. They had questions, they had concerns, and deep in his augmented consciousness, Anakin knew they had every right to be worried. The Jedi Temple had stood for 1,000 generations, but as Anakin walked its halls, each step resonating with mechanical precision, it felt like a tomb. Masters he'd known since childhood moved aside as he passed, their expressions carefully neutral in a way that screamed their discomfort. The armor made stealth impossible, announcing his presence to anyone with force sensitivity like a beacon burning in the darkness. Only Obi-Wan waited outside the council chambers, his face lined with worry, but his stance open, welcoming. When he saw Anakin, relief flooded his features, though it was tinged with something else, uncertainty, perhaps even fear. Still, he stepped forward without hesitation. Inside the council chamber, the familiar circle held familiar faces. Master Yoda sat forward on his chair, his ancient eyes studying Anakin with an intensity that made even the armor systems feel inadequate. Master Windu's stern expression was unchanged, but his hands gripped his chair's armrest with white-knuckle force. The air itself felt heavy with unspoken judgment. Your actions on Malachor prevented a separatist superweapon from being deployed. The Republic owes you thanks, but the transformation you've undergone troubles us deeply. Touched by something beyond our ken, you have been. A shadow within light. Dangerous this makes you, but also necessary perhaps. I can feel something coming, something worse than the war ending. It feels like reality itself is holding its breath. The Grandmaster's eyes snapped open with sudden intensity. He spoke of shadows around the Chancellor, of darkness clouding the future. The Council couldn't see clearly anymore, and now Anakin, transformed into something they didn't understand, stood before them as either their greatest hope or their ultimate failure. Master Plo Koon mentioned the growing strength of the dark side, how something was manipulating the war toward a catastrophic end. The meeting ended with more questions than answers, but as Anakin left, Master Windu gave him the smallest of nods. Not approval, but acknowledgement. Whatever Anakin had become, they believed he might still choose the light. The weeks that followed became a crucible of discovery. In the Temple's training rooms, with only Ahsoka as witness, Anakin learned to control systems that defied everything he understood about technology. The armor enhanced his strength beyond measure. He could crush Durasteel with his bare hands, could move faster than even a Jedi's enhanced reflexes would allow. Integrated shields deflected blaster fire. A neural interface made his lightsaber respond to mere thought rather than physical motion. But the warrior memories taught him more than technique. The first warrior showed him discipline, how to carry impossible burdens without breaking under their weight. The second taught him rage, but also how to channel it with purpose rather than letting it consume his soul. The third taught him silence, that sometimes actions spoke louder than any words could. He trained obsessively, pushing the armor's limits, learning to navigate the 3 voices that now lived inside his head. They weren't separate entities, they were aspects of something older than the Force itself, fragments of eternal warriors who had fought in the first conflicts between the Celestials and the Primordials. And somehow, through that artifact on Malachor, they had chosen him as their newest vessel. Padmé watched it all with increasingly haunted eyes. In the privacy of her apartment, where they could pretend for a few hours that the galaxy wasn't falling apart around them, she finally spoke the words neither of them wanted to acknowledge. You're different. Not just the armor. You, Anakin, you scare me sometimes. I'm becoming something else, something the galaxy needs. But you and our child, you're my anchor. If I lose myself, I need you to remind me who I was. Then promise me you won't forget. Promise me the armor won't make you into someone who can't love anymore. He kissed her then, desperate and gentle, holding her like she was the only thing in a universe of shadows. Outside, the war ground toward its inevitable conclusion, and Anakin could feel through the Force that something terrible was coming. The warrior memories whispered warnings, but even they couldn't predict exactly when the galaxy would shatter. The day General Grievous died should have been a day of celebration. Across Coruscant, citizens poured into the streets, believing the war was finally over, not knowing their Supreme Chancellor had orchestrated every moment of suffering for his own dark purpose. But Anakin felt it the instant Order 66 was transmitted, a disturbance so profound it nearly drove him to his knees, even through the armor's systems. Millions of lights snuffed out across the galaxy, Jedi dying by the thousands at the hands of the clone troopers they'd trusted with their lives, taught alongside, fought beside for 3 years. He felt Obi-Wan's shock and horror on Utapau, felt Master Yoda's ancient grief as younglings died in the temple's halls, felt Ahsoka's hidden terror somewhere far away as Rex's brothers turned on her. And underneath it all, he felt something else, a presence he'd known for years but never truly seen until this moment, the one the warrior memories now recognized with absolute clarity: Palpatine, the Chancellor, the Mentor, the Sith Lord who'd been grooming him all along for a fall that would never come now, because Anakin had been transformed into something beyond manipulation. The warrior memories crystallized with perfect understanding. The first warrior's tactical mind analyzed every conversation, every manipulation, every carefully planted seed of doubt. The second warrior's rage ignited at the betrayal, at the corruption of power, at the deaths of innocents. The third warrior's instinct recognized evil in its purest form and demanded immediate action. Anakin walked into the Senate building without announcing himself, without guards, without fear. The structure was chaos, senators fleeing as reports of genocide reached Coruscant, but Palpatine sat in his office, calm and smiling as though he'd been waiting for this exact moment. The Sith Lord's eyes gleamed with satisfaction and hunger. "Anakin, my boy, there's been a Jedi rebellion, but together you and I can save Padmé. I can teach you to prevent her death. All you need to do is, I know what you are. I've always known, deep down. But I couldn't see it because I didn't want to. You think you can oppose me? I'm the dark side. I'm the culmination of 1,000 years of Sith planning." The armor's system surged as Anakin drew on the Force in ways Sidious couldn't comprehend. The Sith Lord attacked with lightning, with rage, with all the dark power he'd hoarded across decades. It would have killed any Jedi, but the armor channeled the Force itself, transforming lightning into kinetic energy that Anakin released in a single devastating blow. His fist, enhanced by technology beyond anything the Republic had ever created, crashed into Sidious's chest with the force of a falling star. The Sith Lord's eyes widened in shock and disbelief. In his 1,000-year plan, this possibility had never existed. Then his body folded around the impact, and he was thrown backward through his desk, through the transparasteel window behind it, tumbling down through Coruscant's endless vertical cityscape until even the Force couldn't track his fall. Anakin stood in the ruined office, breathing hard, feeling the armor systems recalibrating around him. The warrior memories whispered their approval. One tyrant fallen, one cycle broken. But then he felt something that made his victory taste like ashes. The Force itself screamed in agony. The balance Sidious had corrupted wasn't restored, it was shattered. The dark side, freed from the Sith Lord's iron control, surged and twisted like a living thing, seeking new vessels, new champions. The light side, gutted by the deaths of thousands of Jedi, grew weak and desperate, and Anakin stood at the center of it all, neither light nor dark, something the Force itself didn't know how to classify. Behind him, Ahsoka appeared in the doorway. She'd fought her way through the chaos in the Senate building, had felt through their bond the moment Sidious died. Her lightsabers were ignited but lowered, her face pale with shock at what she saw. Not the office's destruction, but what she perceived in Anakin himself. "Anakin, what have you done?" "What I had to do, Snips. The war is over, but something's broken in the Force. I can feel it dying. Then we fix it, together. Whatever you've become, you're still my master. I'm not abandoning you." Outside, the galaxy began to tear itself apart. With Sidious dead and the Jedi decimated, the careful balance that had held civilization together for 1,000 years collapsed. Clone troopers, still following Order 66, hunted the few surviving Jedi. Separatist forces, no longer under Sidious's control, fractured into warlord factions. The Republic, leaderless and traumatized, spiraled toward chaos. And deep in the Force, ancient beings stirred. The Celestials, the Primordials, entities that had shaped the galaxy itself. They felt the change in Anakin Skywalker, felt the warrior memories awakening in their newest vessel. Some saw hope. Others saw only the beginning of something worse than anything that had come before. The Chosen One had fulfilled his prophecy, but not in any way the ancient texts had predicted. In the days that followed, Anakin made the hardest decision of his life. With Order 66 still echoing through clone programming across the galaxy, with Ahsoka working desperately to remove inhibitor chips from as many clones as she could reach, he went to Padmé. She was 8 months pregnant now, hidden away in her apartment while the galaxy burned outside. He told her everything, about the warrior memories, about what the armor had made him, about the choice he had to make. If he stayed on Coruscant, he would become what the galaxy feared: a weapon, a tyrant, another Sidious in different armor. The power inside him demanded purpose, demanded conflict, and if he remained among civilization, he would inevitably become the very thing he'd destroyed. Padmé wept, but she understood. She always understood. They agreed that she would go into hiding on Naboo, that their children, twins the medical droids had revealed, would be raised in secret. Rex, his inhibitor chip removed by Ahsoka, swore an oath to protect them. Obi-Wan, traumatized by the slaughter of the Jedi and by the Emperor's death at Anakin's hand, chose exile on Tatooine to watch over what he believed would be their son. I failed you, Anakin. I should have seen what was happening, should have protected you from this. You gave me everything, Master, but this path, I have to walk it alone, for everyone's sake. Promise me you'll come back when you can. Promise me our children will know their father. And then Anakin Skywalker left Coruscant, vanishing into the galaxy with only Ahsoka knowing his true destination. He went to the Outer Rim, to the unknown regions, to places where the Force itself was wild and untamed. He went to learn control, to master the warrior memories before they consumed him completely. Legends began to spread across the Shattered Republic. Tales of a warrior in strange armor appearing on battlefields where the innocent were threatened, destroying slavers and warlords with impossible power, then vanishing before anyone could approach. Some called him a ghost, others called him the Wrath. A few, who remembered the hero without fear, whispered the name Anakin Skywalker and wondered if their champion had truly died or simply been transformed into something beyond their understanding. 5 years passed like a breath in the eternal expanse of the Force. Anakin traveled to the places the Republic had never charted, worlds where the Force manifested in ways the Jedi never imagined, where reality itself seemed malleable. He found ancient temples of the Celestials, ruins that predated the Republic by millennia. In these places, he learned to truly master what he'd become. The warrior memories, once overwhelming, became integrated aspects of himself rather than separate voices. He learned to channel the first warrior's discipline without losing his passion, to harness the second warrior's rage without becoming consumed by it, to embrace the third warrior's purpose without sacrificing his humanity. He encountered others on his journey, Force users who had survived Order 66 and fled to the galaxy's edges. Some recognized him and fled in terror. Others sought to challenge him, believing the legends of his power. He avoided combat when possible, but when cornered, the armor's capabilities combined with his mastery proved overwhelming. Word spread that the Wrath could not be defeated, could not be killed, could not be stopped. Through the Force, he maintained a distant connection to those he'd left behind. He felt when Padmé gave birth. Twins, a boy and a girl, healthy and strong in the Force. Felt her joy and her sorrow that he couldn't be there. Rex protected them on Naboo, with a network of clone deserters forming a quiet guard around them. Ahsoka had become a legend in her own right, leading a rebellion against the warlords that had filled Sidious's void, slowly rebuilding something that might one day become a new republic. Obi-Wan remained on Tatooine, watching over Luke from a distance, unaware that Leia grew up on Naboo under her mother's loving care. The old Jedi Master had grown bitter in his isolation, unable to reconcile what Anakin had become with the brother he'd known. In his darkest moments, he wondered if destroying Sidious had been worth the cost of the Force itself being thrown into chaos. But the Force, chaotic and wounded as it was, began to heal in ways no one expected. Without the Sith's corruption, and with only scattered Jedi remaining, it started to return to something more primal, more balanced. Light and dark existed not as opposing absolutes, but as aspects of a greater whole. And Anakin, transformed by technology and ancient power, stood as the living embodiment of that new balance. On the 10th anniversary of Order 66, Anakin Skywalker finally returned to known space. His children were 10 years old now, strong and healthy, growing up under Rex's protection and Padmé's love. Luke showed promise as a pilot, already obsessed with flying despite never having left Naboo's atmosphere. Leia demonstrated a sharp political mind, studying the Republic's fall with the intensity of someone determined to prevent such catastrophe from ever happening again. Anakin watched from a distance, cloaked by the Force, afraid that his presence would bring danger or that they would fear the armored figure he'd become. But Padmé sensed him anyway. She always could. That night, in the gardens of their hidden home, they reunited. She was older, marked by years of worry and loss, but still the woman he loved more than the Force itself. She told him everything, how Ahsoka had built a network of free worlds in the Outer Rim, how the scattered Jedi survivors were slowly, carefully reforming their order with new understanding, how Obi-Wan had finally left Tatooine, traveling the galaxy to find other survivors, to build something new from the ashes of the old, how Rex and his clone brothers had become protectors rather than soldiers, guardians of a new peace. The galaxy still needs you, Anakin, not as a warrior, not as a weapon, but as a father, as a symbol that redemption is possible. I'm not sure I can ever come back fully. The armor, The power, it's part of me now. I can't separate from it without dying. Then don't separate from it. Just remember what it's protecting. Remember why you chose this path instead of the dark. The next day, Anakin met his children for the first time since their birth. Luke's eyes went wide with wonder at the armor. Leia's narrowed with suspicion, her political instincts already sharp. Rex stood nearby, hand near his holster, old habits dying hard, but Padmé's presence steadied them all. Anakin removed his helmet, something he'd rarely done in a decade, revealing a face aged beyond his years, scarred by burden and power, but still recognizably human, still recognizably their father. He knelt before his children, this warrior who had killed an emperor and reshaped the Force itself, and simply said the words he'd waited 10 years to speak. I'm sorry I couldn't be here, but everything I've done, everything I've become, it was to give you both a chance to grow up free. Years later, the stories would blur into legend. Some would say Anakin Skywalker died on Mustafar, consumed by darkness. Others would claim he ascended to become a Force god, watching over the galaxy from beyond. A few would know the truth, that he lived on the edges of known space, appearing when the balance tipped too far one way or another, a guardian in strange armor who protected the fragile peace his sacrifice had created. Luke would grow to become a Jedi, trained by Obi-Wan and his father both, learning that the Force was more than light and dark. Leia would lead the reformation of the Republic, building something stronger than what had fallen. Together, with Ahsoka's wisdom and Rex's loyalty, they would create a galaxy that learned from its past, rather than repeating it. And on Malachor, in the ruins where it all began, fragments of that ancient artifact still hummed with dormant power, waiting for the next time the galaxy would need a champion, waiting for the next warrior who would choose their own path, no matter what destiny demanded. The Force remembered. The Force always remembered. And in its infinite complexity, it whispered one truth across time and space, that choice, not prophecy, was the real power that shaped the universe. If you enjoyed this journey into the shadows of what might have been, remember to hit that subscribe button and join us for more explorations of the infinite possibilities within that galaxy far, far away. May the Force be with you, always.